Everyone, thanks for joining me. So the 60 Mark I, for me, this is one of the best cameras that Canon has produced, and it's flown under the radar so much because of standout negative features on the camera. And this is something that comes up again and again and again with people's reviews. There's a difference, right? And you need to understand this. When people review products, especially cameras, a lot of the people have either used the camera for a very, very short period of time, or they've never used it at all and they've just looked at the spec sheet and they jump on the bandwagon. And the things that stand out with very quickly done reviews, or people that are just looking at spec sheets and jumping on the bandwagon, is the outlying features stand out. So let's say crazy high ISO, crazy high megapixel count, some sort of weakness in a focusing system, a lack of having dual memory card slots. These kind of things are outlying features, and that tends to be what people focus on. Now, I think it's kind of fair to some degree that if those things get looked at, it's fair to look at those outlying issues, or to some degree, because it might be really a deal breaker or a deal maker for certain people. And I get that. But I think what happens too much is that the negative features, things that are seen as negative, get blown out of proportion and are not realistic. And when you look and say, well, the other camera has this and has that, what you're missing is all of that middle ground stuff, which actually is what makes a camera most of the time. And so the 60 Mark I has just flown under the radar for most people. And in my opinion, I think it was one of Canon's best achievements as a camera. And unfortunately, Canon does this thing where it segments and tiers off cameras to have different types of features, but they will then cripple certain cameras below with certain features which will give them a bad reputation. And I don't think Canon's really come up with a very good way of doing this yet, and I think they shoot themselves in the foot a bit with it. The 60 Mark I, for me, is Canon's second best ever sensor. The only one that I thought was better was the 5D Mark I, the classic. After that, for me, it's just my opinion, it's a battle between the 60 Mark I and the 5D Mark II. Where the 60 Mark I shines over the 5D Mark II is that it has better ISO performance and better dynamic range as well, and it has a better focusing system. Let's address some of the things that were seen as negative about this camera, which made it a real problem for people. And the first one has to be the focusing system. Canon stuck to that 9-point array, and I think as soon as people saw that, they like groaned and thought it's the same system from the 5D Mark I and the 5D Mark II. Now the array, the shape or the cluster of those focus points is indeed the same as those two cameras, but the performance of it has been beefed up significantly. Not only are the outer focus points better, they're still not great. I'm not going to pretend that they're perfect now, they're definitely not. The center focus point in particular is super accurate, works very well in low light, is fast and is a fast and accurate focus point. So if you're prepared to use focus and recompose, you're going to have a good camera on your hands for low light focusing. The outer focus points have just been beefed up. They're not great, but they're okay. Now, the other issue people had with that focusing system is that it's only got 9 autofocus points. That could be a problem for some people, but I don't really think it is for most people. Personally, when I was using the 5D Mark III, I was cutting the focus points down to, I think it was 16 or so, because I don't want to be tap, 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 moving the focus point around, you know, going squares like this, like you're playing Pac-Man or something, just trying to move this focus point around. It's too slow. I want to be able to jump, jump, jump and get over here, jump, jump over here, and move those focus points around more quickly. For most people, and even for my use as well, I can live with 3 focus points, one on the left, one on the right, and one in the middle. I'm okay with that. And I'll tell you why I'm okay is because I can do a slight focus and recompose without having to make big movements. With 3 focus points, I can do that very easily and work very quickly. That might sound a bit out of date now in the time when we've got eye tracking and all that kind of stuff, but it's actually a very fast way to work, and it's quite easy to do. When you have just that 9 focus point array, what I find myself doing is just tapping left to the right to the middle, and you're skipping across really quickly. And what that means is that you're getting to the outer focus points in 1 or 2 taps and nothing more than that. So you're able to move your focus point large distances across the frame very quickly. I know for certain types of photography, this is just a deal breaker, so any types of sports stuff, but you guys are not looking at this camera for that. This camera is for people that photograph people. That's my opinion, or landscapes and buildings. That's where this camera works best, and it's what it's designed for. Now the 60 Mark I only has one memory card slot, it's an SD card. That's going to be up to you to decide if that's a deal breaker or not. I'm not going to say anything more on that. It's just up to you, because everyone has different levels of importance to the work they do and different requirements. Now, before I get onto the image quality of this camera, which is going to be the main feature, I guess, I just want to touch briefly on the ergonomics. The ergonomics of this camera are really nice. It's got a very nice grip. It's got a very nice screen on the back. Dials and everything are easy to operate. The only one thing that is slightly awkward is the positioning of that D-pad. Remember, it doesn't have a joystick on the back, so you're using that D-pad. This isn't a problem, it's just that it's a slight reach down with the thumb, which is a little bit awkward. It's just not a big deal, I think it's okay. Every camera that you get will have negatives, will have things that you don't like about it. So for me, this was one of the things that I didn't like. It wasn't the fact that it was a D-pad and not a joystick. That doesn't bother me at all, especially when there aren't many focus points to select. There's no point having a joystick when you've got 9 focus points, right? It just doesn't mean much. The D-pad's fine, it's just that it's low down and it's a little bit of an awkward reach to get. But the balance and the grip itself on the camera is very nice. It's a very small camera, it's a very light camera. The battery life on it is excellent. It just chugs on for ages. I would go as far as saying that the 60 Mark I, as a used buy, in the UK now you can get them for £400 in decent condition. That has to be one of the best value cameras on the market right now. It has to be. I don't think there's much better than that. Probably the D600 from Nikon and maybe the D800 as well, the competitors. So let's get on to what you really do get with the 60 Mark I. And what you get from it is just the sensor in this camera is wonderful. You get vibrant colors and skin tones, very pleasing color palette, very easy to work with, and flexible dynamic range. Don't quote the number of stops of dynamic range from DxO Mark. I don't care, I've used loads of cameras. The dynamic range in the 60 Mark I is very, very good. It's really usable and really nice to work with. You're gonna really like this camera. If you're shooting portraits in particular, that's where I think this camera stands out the most, but also for landscape photographers too. If you're a Canon shooter, you'll make use of that dynamic range and a good screen on the back of it. It'll be very nice for you to use. Now for me, as someone who's shot many different cameras from different systems, I would have to put the 60 Mark I up there as one of my favorite cameras that I've shot with. So my advice to you is to stop looking at the kind of negative opinion-based reviews and start looking at people who have used this camera and see what they say. People that have owned it for a long period of time and actually worked with it. Because as I said at the start, it's very easy when you have the camera for a day, or if you've never used it, to just see the outlying features of what's good and bad and not see that whole chunk of what it's like to actually live with, which is the real world experience of people using a camera like this. If you're thinking about buying a 60 Mark I, look online for one of those stores where they give you sort of 7 or 14 day, no questions asked, money back guarantee and a 6-month warranty. That way you can try the camera out. If you don't like it, within 7 days you can send it back. But if you do like it, you've got yourself a really nice little camera to work with. A good alternative to the 60 Mark I though, if you're looking for something a bit more modern and not too much more expensive, is the Canon RP, and you can check out my review of that right here.